There is something hardwired into who we are that motivates us to 4 different levels of motivation. These 4 different motivations are preservation, pleasure, power, and perpetuate. And we're going to take a brief look at what these 4 things and how they contrast to the way of Jesus. The first motivation is preservation, looking out for number 1, looking after the food and the shelter and the basic necessities for life. There is something that is in us that makes sure that we are going to survive tomorrow. Level 2 is when you've guaranteed that, when you've locked in the fact that you're going to survive, then there is something in us that seeks pleasure, that we need to get as much pleasure out of this short life that we possibly can. We can only focus on pleasure once our preservation, once our basic necessities are taken care of. But once that's taken care of, all we can think about is having a good time. When those pleasures run dry and when those things don't meet a deeper need, then we go to the next motivation, which is power. And this is all about this deep-seated need to build something that shows your influence and success. There are so many different people who have exhausted the simple pleasures of life and have desired to establish corporations, organizations, businesses, political parties that seek to establish their control and their desire to impact and to change the world. Only then, when you have leveled up from the basic needs for life, the desires that you can get from life, the desire to make an impact in this world, do you finally get to the 4th level of preservation. And when you've made it to the tippy top of humanity, there is this switch which gears from I want to make a difference in my own lifetime and to make a difference in my own world, to then wanting to have a lasting impact, a lasting name for yourself. And this is a preservation of your name. And you want to be remembered. And we see this all the time through art, through sculptures of the greats, through politics and reform and changes and political change that people make. And even to the degree of war and conquering nations and conquering the world to create something that's going to outlast themselves. It's not so much that these 4 things are wrong, because they're kind of hardwired into who we are. But the problem is when all these 4 things are geared to ourselves, we get into all kinds of trouble. You see, when we come to acknowledge the King of the universe and discover the way and the life of Jesus, all 4 of these things are completely transformed. Listen to this passage in Mark chapter 6 where Jesus is talking about the necessities of life. He says in Mark 6:25, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is life not more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life?" And then he goes on to say this, "For the pagans run after all of these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But get this, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all of these things will be given to you as well." This is wild, because Jesus isn't denying these 4 things, but he's transforming them into being God-sized. Let's get this. Preservation. God is the ultimate provider, and he will look after you. Pleasure. Delight yourself in the Lord. There's a sense of joy that can only ever be found in Jesus. Power. Partner with God in creating his lasting kingdom for his glory. And lastly, the perpetuation, enter into God's glory for eternity, honoring his name and his righteous rule. You see, when we are self-centered, these 4 things become about us, level 1, 2, 3, and 4. But when we submit ourselves to the life and the way of Jesus, these 4 things become about him and are ultimately fulfilled and are beautifully demonstrated in the church. I don't know what your life consists of, whether all you're trying to worry about is making enough money to survive tomorrow, or whether you are trying to get as much pleasure out of life, trying to have a good time, or if you are trying to flex your success muscles and trying to demonstrate how powerful and effective you are, or if you're trying to make a name for yourself that's going to outlive you, all of these things are going to fall flat to sustain and to fulfill that deepest God-sized hole in your heart. Only when we submit all four of these things to the way of Jesus will we finally realize that life isn't all about me, it's all about King Jesus.